Welcome back to the Dark Reading News Desk at Black Hat 2025. Terry Sweeney here, contributing editor with Dark Reading, and joining me now on the stage is Melinda Marks, Practice Director of Cybersecurity with Enterprise Strategy Group. Melinda, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Terry.
We are talking about software supply chain security, which is a huge topic here at Black Hat USA. Let's start by talking a bit about how moving to cloud-based development complicated the software supply chain security model. From where you sit, does the model need to be simplified or compartmentalized better, or do we just need better guardrails on the existing infrastructure?
Yeah, it's just become a lot more complex when you think about moving to the cloud workloads, cloud native development. When we think about software application development, it used to be linear, where it was easier to do software and know the inventory of your code. You build it, you release it, and then there's periodic updates. Now with cloud native and cloud platforms, it's a lot easier for developers to provision their code or provision their infrastructure, build their code. To do it faster, they might use third-party code, and then they push it to production as quickly as possible, and then they're just updating it over and over again.
Sure.
So there's more steps to the process, and it's throughout the software development lifecycle, and it's not static anymore. So you need to get the safe code or get the code, make sure it's secure. Before you push it out, you need to test it. And then if anything has changed and it's easier to collaborate with modern software development, there's more chance for changes and tampering. And then when it's running, hackers are going to target it because it's if there's third-party code that's commonly used, it's more complicated. Then if there's updates made, when you make those updates, make sure that code is also tested.
Did visibility and transparency also either get reduced or eliminated in this movement to cloud-based development?
Well, it's more difficult to get that full visibility to see what changes. So that's also what complicates it. And for security teams, they may or may not have visibility into developers' processes or what tools they're using, how they're testing their code. What we want to see is for security to be more involved in making sure that they understand what tools and processes the developers are using, their CI/CD pipelines, and make sure that they get the right security tools and processes in place to make it seamless for developers to get the right secure code, test it properly when they release it. If there are issues found, it's faster to remediate them.
All right. Let's switch gears slightly to open source, which is inexpensive and super accessible, and unfortunately often suffers from more than its share of vulnerabilities, it seems. It's also become something of a whipping boy for critics of software supply chain security in general. Are the criticisms fair? Are there workarounds or long-term solutions that are being considered for open source?
Yeah, well, the benefits of open source is that it's often freely available tool code that developers can use. It makes it a lot faster for them to develop their applications. They can focus on just custom code and then pulling in already developed code. It should be good code, but part of the challenge is that for hackers, they're going to target anything that gives them access to treasure. And if it's open source and widely used, and they can find a vulnerability and a way to attack, then they're going to target that. So that's anything where people can be careless or neglect things. That's what the hackers are going to target.
Yeah, it's the path of least resistance, right?
Exactly. So that's why it's important to proactively make sure that you can take the steps to security software supply chain, understand the inventory, understand the code components. What's challenging is that as we see, our studies show that there's higher percentage of open source code and third-party code used in the applications. So it means it's harder to manage, and the lines kind of blur, especially if developers are using AI tools. They're suggesting code components, and you don't know the provenance of that code. You want to make sure you secure all of that because that's your application code and take the right steps for that. So yes, use it if it helps with productivity, but make sure you have the right security tools and processes in place to make sure that it's secure and doesn't expose you to more risk.
Well, thank you for bringing up AI. No conversation here is complete without it, right?
I was going to say, it's like the timer. How long does it take before you can get to
What
AI?
do you win?
Yeah.
So generative AI obviously is transforming the development environment as well. Developers embrace its efficiencies and its adaptabilities, but is there concern, or are we already seeing like generative AI opening up new entry points for exploitation, unintended vulnerabilities? What are you seeing there?
Absolutely. Yeah, just check the news from, recent news. There's a lot of hacks into AI, Gen AI, agentic AI models. And again, it's one of those things, people are going to use it. They're going to try to use new technology as fast as they can without thinking of the security implications. So, and we see this too in our research. We ask, what are your top concerns? What do you think are the elements that you're most susceptible to compromise for? And it's Gen AI are at the top of the list of concerns. Okay. So that's why you want to proactively make sure you have guardrails in place. You talk to developers. What are you going to use? What models are you going to use? Let's make sure that whatever tools you're using can source secure software, or you can make sure that you can test the code in your application before you release it, and then also, again, monitor it and have all the things in place to make sure if inevitably, no matter how much you try to do proactive security before you release your application, ideally you release a secure application, but when it's running, there's going to be exploits in the wild and new things that pop up. And then when that happens, you don't want to have a challenge finding where those code components are so you can make the right remediations. And we've seen that in the past with attacks where people knew of the vulnerabilities and knew they had to act quickly, but they couldn't find it because sometimes it's just buried in the code in different packages or foundational elements of their software. So that can be challenging.
Okay. Melinda, take us out with some advice for both developers and for CISOs who are looking to improve their software supply chain security. Where should each of those groups be looking?
Yeah, the biggest thing is for CISOs, security leaders, to be aware of these challenges and get ahead of the problem. Talk to developers, collaborate with them, align with them on goals for things like application uptime, resiliency, and get on the same page to make sure that you're taking the right steps to secure the full life cycle for the software supply chain. And if you can collaborate, it works out well for both parties. Right.
Well, great job distilling a super complicated topic into some really reasonable and understandable bits of data here. Melinda, thanks so much for joining us on the Dark Reading News Desk.
Thank you so much for having me, Terry.
We've been talking with Melinda Marks of Enterprise Strategy Group. This has been Terry Sweeney for the Dark Reading News Desk. Thanks for joining us for this segment. We'll see you next time.